Before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Your support keeps us going. Now, let's get into it. They announced my brother as the new CEO on live television. Lucian Virelli. 33. Dimpled smile. Charcoal suit. A perfectly rehearsed speech on legacy, innovation, and the soul of our media empire. His voice quivered slightly as he thanked our late mother, my mother, for her inspiration. Then he looked straight into the camera, nodded meaningfully, and said, "We carry her vision forward. I'm honored to do so." The applause that erupted was thunderous, almost defiant. As if the world had collectively decided to forget me. I watched it unfold from a cracked television screen mounted in the corner of a dimly lit bar in downtown Lyon, the sound half muted by murmurs and the soft hum of a broken refrigerator. No one recognized me. No one even looked twice. That's what a public shaming does to a woman. It strips her name, her face, her presence. It replaces her with a rumor and deletes her from every algorithm that once praised her. 2 years ago, I was Evelyn Virelli, the face of Virelli Media's AI division, the architect behind Sentinel, the real-time misinformation detection system that won international awards. I spoke at summits, advised governments, and shook hands with presidents. Now I was Evelyn, nothing. No surname. No title. No trace. Just another woman in a bar, watching someone else steal her life. I sipped my espresso slowly, too aware of the bitterness. "Hey," the bartender said in French, nodding to the screen. "Big news, huh? That guy's gonna change the world. He's good." I smiled, small and tight. "He's not even a developer," I replied quietly, switching to English. The bartender didn't understand. Didn't matter. The point wasn't to be heard. Not yet. On screen, Lucian continued his victory lap, thanking the board of directors, announcing a new era of ethical media, and even quoting one of my speeches verbatim. "In a world built on stories, the truth is the only anchor." The same line I'd once said on stage in front of 10,000 people. He delivered it without blinking. Without shame. That was the final straw. Not the speech. Not the promotion. Not the theft. It was the smile. My smile. He had studied it. Replicated it. His entire performance was a mask, mine. It made me feel not just replaced, but dissected. But I didn't cry. 2 years ago, I might have. 2 years ago, I broke down in an elevator when they told me I was under internal investigation. I screamed into silk pillows when the board suspended me. Pending a full review. I smashed my phone when the news outlets published leaked financial records, alleging I'd embezzled $4.8 million from a social impact fund I created. Of course, the numbers were doctored. The documents were fake. The leak was planted. And they knew it. I disappeared after that. No press statements, no denials, no desperate interviews trying to clear my name. I let them erase me because I needed time to learn how they did it. And who helped them. I was not gone. I was watching. From every anonymous server. From every data leak. From every phone call Clara forwarded to me under encrypted names. Clara Morrow was the only person who didn't abandon me. My former legal director. The only one who knew there was a sealed will, written by my mother, that transferred her shares, and her voice, to me the day I turned 30. A document the board had never seen. Because my father buried it. Along with the truth. Lucian raised his glass to the audience now, basking in applause. The logo behind him flickered into the company's new motto. Virelli 2.0, clarity. Courage. Control. Control. I almost laughed. Not because it was ironic. But because it was fragile. In another part of the world, 10 different inboxes pinged at once. Journalists. Coders. Whistleblowers. All received the same email, sent from a domain registered to a non-existent foundation. Attached was a signed software patent for Sentinel, dated 3 years before Lucian joined the company. Signed by Evelyn M. Virelli. Me. There was no press release. No social media post. No explanation. Only a message, pinned anonymously on an obscure forum known to a handful of investigative journalists. Truth isn't a trend. It's an extinction event. The bartender changed the channel. Something about football scores. The broadcast ended. But the game had just begun. The hotel Clara picked was tucked away in the 6th arrondissement, quiet, understated, and painfully elegant. She always had a flair for discretion. The lobby smelled of bergamot and new leather, with soft lighting that kissed the marble floors like a secret. Evelyn stepped through the revolving doors like a shadow returning home, unseen, unannounced, but unmistakably real. Clara sat at the far end, nursing a cup of tea, her eyes scanning every face with the precision of someone trained to find a threat in a room full of smiles. Her hair was shorter now. Gray streaks touched the temples. But her presence? Unchanged. Calculated. Calm. Dangerous in the way truth often is. I almost didn't believe it, Clara said as Evelyn approached. The message. The email. It felt like a ghost was writing to me. I was, Evelyn replied. A ghost, I mean. But you kept my memory alive. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. There wasn't time for sentiment. Not anymore. They sat. No pleasantries. Clara slid a manila envelope across the table. Evelyn opened it slowly, knowing exactly what was inside. Still, her breath caught when her eyes met the ink, last will and testament of Mariella Varelli. It was dated 8 years ago. The seal of a Geneva notary still intact. The signature, her mother's looping cursive, unmistakable. And there, in clean black letters, the declaration. All intellectual property, shares, and fiduciary rights related to Varelli Media, including any subsidiary technologies developed by Evelyn M. Varelli, are to be transferred to her sole control upon her 30th birthday. Evelyn had turned 30 a month before the scandal. They buried this, she whispered. They buried her, Clara corrected. Your father had the board convinced it never existed. He told them Mariella's estate was handled privately. That she had no interest in the company after her illness. She co-founded the company, Evelyn said, voice hard. She coded the original media algorithm. She built our first content engine in a basement. And that's why she wanted you to have it, Clara said. She knew what the brand meant. She also knew what it would become without a conscience. Evelyn's fingers lingered on the signature. You kept it hidden for 2 years? Clara nodded. After the scandal broke, I tried to speak up. The board wouldn't listen. Your father threatened to sue me for breaching an NDA I never signed. I resigned the next morning and left everything behind, except this. Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. You were always better at paperwork than revolutions. I'm learning, Clara replied. And I brought you something else. She reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. Plain. Unlabeled. It's a recording, Clara said. 1 month after the board voted to suspend you, your father and Lucien had a private meeting. I had left my phone recording on accident. Or maybe not. Either way, it captured this. Evelyn inserted the drive into her tablet. The audio was grainy, but the voices were clear. Lucien. She'll come back. She's not stupid. She'll find a way. Father Varelli. Then we make sure her way doesn't exist. We own her code. Her patent. Her story. It's ours now. Lucien. What about the shares? Father Varelli. The NDA will hold. No court will dig deeper. She's radioactive. Click. Silence filled the room like smoke. Evelyn didn't blink. They were never going to let me come back. Not even if I played their game. No, Clara said. They never wanted a return. They wanted a replacement. They spent the next 3 days in a safe house apartment near Annecy. Clara's contacts in digital forensics confirmed the audio's authenticity. Meanwhile, Evelyn reactivated the first fragments of her hidden network. Coders, lawyers, whistleblowers, old friends who owed her favors or believed in the cause. She needed more than evidence. She needed an engine. Something fast, viral, and incorruptible. That's when she remembered Celine Vargas. Celine had been a firebrand political advisor until Varelli Media framed her in a fake adultery scandal involving a married senator. Overnight, she was unemployable. Her clients dropped her. Her name became a punchline. Evelyn reached out using a blind email account. Celine responded in 4 minutes. Whatever you're building, I'm in. The second message Evelyn sent went to Milo Ashraf, once the founder of a promising edtech startup. His company had refused to license its student data to Varelli's analytics wing. A week later, a string of negative stories appeared, painting him as unstable, incompetent, and possibly predatory. He lost investors, his board, his company. He had vanished. Now he was back. And furious. I want to burn them, Milo said on the call. You tell me how. I'll bring the matches. Together, they began building Mirror. A decentralized platform. Anonymous uploads. No filters. No algorithms pushing engagement. Only raw, unedited testimonies. Verified through blockchain timestamps and human curation. It wasn't just a place for whistleblowers. It was a memory vault. A firewall against erasure. Why call it Mirror? Milo asked one night. Because the truth doesn't need enhancement, Evelyn replied. It just needs reflection. Celine handled outreach, contacting dozens of people whose lives had been shattered by media narratives they didn't control. Victims of character assassination. Survivors of silence. Some said no. Most said yes. The first post came from a single mother named Reina, whose late husband had been framed for financial fraud by Betrayal coverage in 2018. He died by suicide a month later. Reina uploaded his last email, never published, explaining the setup. Within 12 hours, the post had 30,000 views. Within 24, it was trending on the dark web. Independent journalists picked it up. Reddit caught fire. Twitter imploded. Mirror had cracked the surface. But power doesn't die quietly. Betrayal Media responded within days. A carefully crafted leak appeared on a major news site. Evelyn Betrayal's mental health crisis. Sources confirm history of delusions. They used old therapy records. A psychologist Evelyn had once seen after her mother's death. Cherry-picked. Edited. Out of context. She's emotionally unstable, the article said. Unfit to lead. Prone to paranoia. Possibly dangerous. The headline ran for 48 hours before Mirror countered. They released a full recording of Evelyn's actual session, with consent from the therapist, who had been appalled at the manipulation. The truth was clear. Evelyn had suffered from situational PTSD after her mother's passing and relentless public scrutiny. She'd sought help. She'd healed. The public response? A tide shift. I don't know who Evelyn Betrayal is, one tweet read. But she sounds more stable than everyone running the news. Support surged. Mirror's traffic tripled. Donations flowed in. And journalists, real ones, began to ask the one question Evelyn had been waiting for. Who really created Sentinel? That was the moment she knew the game had changed. Not won, but turned. Clara met her in a park in Montmartre that afternoon. It was cloudy. Cool. The city buzzed around them like an oblivious organism. You're going to war, Clara said. No, Evelyn said softly. I already went. This is the counteroffensive. The night before Lucien's global keynote, Evelyn sat alone in a room illuminated only by the shifting glow of a dozen screens. Streams of code ran like silent rivers across black monitors. Mirror was humming, gathering stories, facts, memories, and ghosts. Every byte carried the weight of voices once erased. Every story was a fuse. The plan wasn't elegant. It wasn't even clean. But it was inevitable. Across the city, Lucien rehearsed his lines with his communications team. The event was being billed as a historic inflection point in digital media ethics. He was poised to unveil the new face of Betrayal Media's proprietary AI, Sentinel Prime, a sleek evolution of the system Evelyn had created. Except this version had been modified. Corrupted. Turned into a tool not of detection, but of suppression. They had taken her child and turned it into a weapon. That was their mistake. This doesn't need to go nuclear, Clara had warned a day earlier. No, Evelyn replied. It needs to go viral. At 8 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Betrayal Media's World Integrity Conference opened its digital doors to over 12 million viewers across streaming platforms, private investor portals, and exclusive in-person seating in Zurich. Flags of multiple nations framed the stage. Behind Lucien stood a massive rotating screen projecting keywords like accountability, transparency, and trust in looping motion graphics. Lucien walked out like a man born for this. Hair precision cut. Suit bespoke. Voice a well-balanced harmony of confidence and humility. He opened with a story. Evelyn's story. She once told me, Lucien began, that the truth wasn't about control. It was about clarity. That inspired me. It's why I stand here today, to deliver on that promise. The camera panned to the front row. Investors nodded. Some even looked emotional. Evelyn watched from a private terminal, eyes dry. This wasn't rage anymore. This was autopsy. Dissection. The final anatomy of a lie. At 8:17 a.m., Mirror's server queue activated a timed drop. Over 100,000 documents, audio files, contracts, internal memos, and code snippets began to leak simultaneously to a curated list of investigative journalists, legal experts, and public watchdog accounts. The Mirror homepage turned black and then blinked with a new headline. This is the version they buried. Each file was accompanied by contextual notes. Who wrote it, what it meant, and who it silenced. The most damning, a chain of internal communications detailing the manipulation of stories to destroy reputations in exchange for political favors. Campaign donations. Algorithm suppression fees. Backdoor data access. And the blueprint of Sentinel's code, annotated to show its original authorship under Evelyn M. Betrayal. The press didn't even need time to digest. They pounced. By 8:32 a.m., hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag VirelliLeaks. Hashtag Sentinel Truth. Hashtag Who Built It. The live broadcast didn't flinch, yet. Lucian carried on, unaware, unveiling the Sentinel Prime interface. Built on the principles of truth and neutrality, he declared. Tested across 5 continents. Audited by 3 independent agencies. All lies. At 8:45 a.m., Evelyn appeared online, on her own live stream. The feed was minimal. No branding. No filters. Just her, seated against a dark gray backdrop, in a black turtleneck, hair tied back, eyes direct. Her face was the same one they had erased. Now reintroduced by her own terms. "This isn't a comeback," she said quietly. "This is a correction." The stream was only available through Mirror, but within minutes, viewers ripped and re-uploaded it everywhere. People abandoned Lucian's stream in real time. The viewership tilted. Headlines shifted. Chat feeds buzzed. She continued, calm and cold. "You've been sold a product wrapped in ethics and powered by erasure. You were told a story about innovation. What you received was infiltration. And I'm not here to ask for credit. I'm here to return ownership. To everyone who lost their voice because someone else paid to silence it." Then she paused. Just long enough. "My name is Evelyn M. Virelli. I designed Sentinel. I created the foundation for a system that was supposed to empower you. They turned it into something else. And they told you it was theirs." She uploaded the original patent filings on screen. Her signature. Her prototype logs. Her timestamped development sessions. The internet caught fire. In Zurich, panic crept into the production booth. Staff were whispering. Phones buzzing. Lucian's earpiece crackled. "Sir, there's a Mirror feed. She's live. It's going viral." Lucian froze. Just for a second. But enough. He regained composure and launched into a pre-written deflection. "In today's open media landscape, misinformation can spread easily. We're proud to have built tools that separate fact from fiction." But the control room couldn't keep up. Multiple news outlets broke embargo. Screens inside the venue began receiving Mirror's feed. Guests checked their phones, then began murmuring. One by one they stood. Some walked out. Others recorded. By 9:10 a.m., a court order, rushed through by Clara and Evelyn's legal team, arrived in Zurich's central registry, a provisional injunction against Virelli Media for misappropriation of intellectual property, breach of fiduciary duty, and suppression of protected speech. Lucian's face strained of color when his legal aide whispered the news. He looked into the camera one last time and said, "We'll be issuing a formal statement shortly." The feed cut. Elsewhere, Evelyn sat back. Mirror's servers held steady under record traffic. New posts flooded in, stories of whistleblowers who had feared retaliation. Testimonials from tech developers, moderators, journalists, even former Virelli employees. Some simply wrote, "We thought we were alone. Now we know better." Clara entered the room behind her. "They're calling it the largest information leak in corporate media history." Evelyn didn't smile. She wasn't finished. "What's the board doing?" she asked. "Scrambling. The chairman just resigned. 3 other board members have called emergency meetings. Your father is in seclusion. Lucian is apparently drafting a personal response. He should draft an apology," Evelyn said. "Do you want the company back?" Clara asked. "You can make the claim now. Legally, they're defenseless. With the will, the patent, the injunction. I don't want the name," Evelyn said. "I want what it promised to be." And failed. By late afternoon, Mirror was more than a platform. It was a movement. International news anchors called Evelyn the invisible architect. Analysts debated the implications of decentralized truth curation. Influencers tried to spin narratives, most failed. People weren't interested in slogans anymore. They were interested in evidence. In authorship. In restoration. Evelyn went offline. She didn't need to say more. The documents spoke louder. The voices on Mirror shouted what she didn't have to. That night, she received an encrypted email from a board member. Just one line. "We knew. We were too afraid to stop them. But it's your company now, if you want it." Evelyn stared at the screen. Then closed her laptop. Outside her window, Paris was breathing. For the first time in years, it felt like the city had made space for her again. The silence wasn't empty. It was earned. Lucian didn't disappear. He did what men like him always do when power begins to slip. He rebranded failure as victimhood. Within 48 hours of the Mirror leaks, he launched a video titled, "The Burden of Legacy." Framed in grayscale, flanked by carefully positioned books, and punctuated with just the right amount of performative remorse. "I believed I was protecting something sacred. he said, voice thick with choreographed regret. Perhaps I was wrong to let my ambition blind me to the people who came before me. To Evelyn. My sister. He never said. I stole. Never said. I lied. Only that he had been misguided. It was enough to sway some, until Mira countered again. This time, not with a leak, but with a full recording. It was from 2 years ago. A dinner at a private estate in Tuscany. Lucian speaking freely, surrounded by Betrayal media executives, laughing over wine. She won't fight back, he had said. She's too clean. She's still trying to prove she's worth something. That makes her predictable. And that makes her obsolete. They laughed. Toasted. Evelyn didn't even need to narrate. The video said it all. That single phrase. She's too clean. Spread across the internet like wildfire. It trended. It memed. It burned. This time, there was no recovery. Lucian's PR team pulled the apology video. He deactivated comments on every platform. Within days, Betrayal Media announced that Lucian had voluntarily stepped down from all executive roles to allow the company to refocus on its mission. No apology. No accountability. Just a slow fade behind corporate curtains. But Evelyn knew that wasn't the end. It never was. Investors began to flee. Stock prices dropped by 27% within the week. Clara helped coordinate a legal acquisition strategy. Evelyn began purchasing back shares, quietly, through shell entities, friends, and anonymous consortiums. Within a month, she was the controlling shareholder. She did not call a press conference. She did not change the company logo. She simply issued a single-page statement to the board. Effective immediately, I assume governance oversight of all ethical, technological, and editorial branches of Betrayal Media. A full audit will follow. Some board members resigned. Some begged to stay. Evelyn didn't care. She wasn't there to make allies. She was there to dismantle what they had built on her name. But something strange happened. As Mira grew, not just as a platform, but as a philosophy, people began expecting Evelyn to become its face. They wanted speeches, panels, influencer collaborations, a podcast even. She declined them all. Because Evelyn understood what her enemies never did. The point wasn't her voice. It was everyone else's finally being heard. That spring, she sat across from her father for the first time in 3 years. He had requested the meeting. He looked older, but not fragile. Still groomed, still powerful in his posture, though something behind his eyes had dimmed. Maybe it was fear. Maybe recognition. He did not start with an apology. He started with, "You've always been talented. But you never understood legacy." Evelyn said nothing. "I built this empire," he continued. "With sweat, with instinct, with compromise. You can't run a company like this without understanding that sometimes you have to bury the inconvenient parts. Your mother didn't understand that either. She was brilliant, yes. But too idealistic." Evelyn looked out the window. The city rolled beneath them, quiet, golden, pulsing. "My mistake," he said slowly. "Was thinking you were like her." "I am," Evelyn replied. "But you weren't wrong." He looked at her, startled. "I'm more like her than you'll ever know," she continued. "But I learned from you too. I learned how power speaks. How it manipulates, distracts, pivots. You taught me how the lie is built. And that's why I'll never become you." He stood, but she didn't. "You think you've won," he said, soft and bitter. "No," she replied. "I think I've restored the ledger." He left without a handshake. The name Betrayal Media didn't survive the year. Evelyn restructured the entire corporate ecosystem, breaking down divisions, firing entire executive teams, and rebranding the organization under a new name. Veres. Truth. Latin. Simple. She didn't trademark the word. She didn't own the truth. But she could host it. Mirror was no longer a fringe site. It had become an embedded module within Veres, a built-in system of public accountability, where any user could challenge, verify, or add context to any story published on the platform. Every media post came with a trace line, a visible lineage of how the information was sourced, edited, and approved. Some called it radical transparency. Others called it chaos. Evelyn called it responsibility. The Mirror Foundation became a real thing, staffed with lawyers, trauma experts, digital archivists. They began helping victims of media distortion file legal challenges, correct the public record, and in some cases, rebuild their lives. She funded it entirely from her own shares. She never took a salary. 1 year later, on a gray and quiet Tuesday, Evelyn sat in her apartment, a far cry from the penthouse where she once lived, before the scandal. This space was smaller, quieter, filled with plants and paperbacks and silence. She rarely gave interviews. But today, she wrote a post. No hashtags. No title. No image. Only one line. When they stole my voice, I learned how to build speakers. She logged off. A few hours later, she received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. I used Mirror to tell my story. Not because I thought it would fix everything. But because my daughter found it. She thought I abandoned her. Now she knows the truth. She called me last night. Thank you? There was no signature. Evelyn read it 3 times. Then carefully, she took a piece of tape and pinned it to the wall beside her desk. She opened a leather-bound notebook and wrote a single sentence beneath the last entry. Stories saved me. So I save stories now. Outside, the world still lied. But not without challenge. Not without mirrors. And not without her. What do you do when the world rewrites your story without your consent? When your name is taken, your voice muted, and your truth buried beneath headlines that never asked for your side? For Evelyn Varelli, the answer wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was reclamation, the kind of slow, deliberate, dangerous reclamation that doesn't chase applause but demands accountability. Her story, in all its quiet rage and cold brilliance, isn't just about the fall of a media empire or the exposure of corporate fraud. It's about the human cost of erasure, and what it means to build truth in a world designed to monetize distortion. Evelyn teaches us that silence can be both weapon and shield. When the scandal broke, when her name was dragged across every screen and her legacy was handed to someone else, she didn't fight back with interviews or PR teams. She vanished. Not because she was broken, but because she was learning. Observing. Listening. There's a kind of wisdom in choosing not to speak when the noise is too loud to hear yourself think. And that silence, the one born not of fear but of calculation, became the foundation for something stronger than vengeance, clarity. Too often, we're taught to react immediately, defend ourselves, explain ourselves, justify our existence in the face of lies. But Evelyn's story shows us that sometimes, the greatest strength is not reaction, but preparation. Instead of wasting energy shouting into a void controlled by those who silenced her, she built a new system, one that couldn't be muted, edited, or bought. Her platform, Mirror, wasn't just a tool. It was a philosophy, that truth doesn't need amplification to matter. It needs space. It needs preservation. It needs witnesses. There's something deeply human in the way Evelyn refused to center herself even when she was finally being heard. She didn't become the face of her movement, despite every opportunity to do so. She didn't brand herself as a savior. She didn't chase validation from the same audience that once abandoned her. Instead, she redirected the spotlight to others, to the forgotten voices, the manipulated narratives, the people who were told their pain didn't rate high enough on the algorithm. She used her power to restore power to those who'd lost it, and in doing so, reminded us that legacy isn't about credit. It's about consequence. The people who tried to erase Evelyn underestimated something essential. Memory isn't just personal, it's collective. When she gave others a platform to share their stories, she wasn't just rebuilding her own voice. She was building an archive of accountability. A record that said, "You were here. You mattered. What happened to you wasn't a glitch, it was a design." In a world obsessed with virality and visibility, she built something slower, deeper, enduring. And that's another lesson buried within her journey. Speed is not proof of truth. We live in an age where narratives move faster than facts, where image often overtakes intention, and where being first is confused with being right. Evelyn's methodical approach, years of silence, months of planning, days of precision, stands in stark contrast to the chaos around her. It reminds us that slow does not mean weak. That taking time is not the same as losing time. Some things, like healing or justice, cannot be rushed. They require patience, not passivity. Persistence, not spectacle. It also takes something rarer, restraint. When Evelyn had the chance to humiliate those who had wronged her, when she could have torn them down with the full force of the internet behind her, she didn't. She didn't twist the knife. She didn't mock. She didn't gloat. She exposed. Quietly. Completely. Elegantly. She let the truth speak. And in doing so, she showed that the most devastating form of power isn't loud, it's precise. It doesn't crush, it reveals. It doesn't punish, it corrects. There's a lesson in her refusal to become the villain in someone else's story. In her ability to reclaim her narrative without inheriting the cruelty of those who wrote her out of it. She reminded us that victory isn't always about dominance. Sometimes, it's about redefinition. About refusing to play by the same rules that broke you in the first place. About walking away with your soul intact, even if the world still wants blood. And perhaps the most important lesson Evelyn leaves us with is this: our stories are not safe in the hands of others. Not when those hands are paid to manipulate, to distort, to erase. We have to fight for our truths, not always in courtrooms or in board meetings, but in conversations, in platforms we build ourselves, in communities that refuse to forget. Evelyn didn't just take back her name. She redefined what it meant to own a story in a world that trades in narratives like currency. Her life didn't return to the spotlight. She didn't become a celebrity. She didn't monetize her pain. She chose something harder: integrity without applause. Justice without revenge. Power without performance. In a world addicted to spectacle, she chose substance. And in doing so, she left a blueprint for the rest of us, not for how to win, but for how to survive what they tried to take. Because someday, they might try to steal your voice. Your name. Your truth. And when that day comes, you'll remember Evelyn Varelli. Not because she was loud, but because she couldn't be silenced. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that legacy was never about the stories they told about you. It was always about the ones you refused to let die.